Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholz. Today we have Chapter 20, the penultimate chapter in the story of Bee, Princess of the Dwarves. And this is the single best cliffhanger episode I could have ever asked for. And I hope you enjoy it, just as much as I hope that you enjoy this Friday's conclusion of Bee, Princess of the Dwarves. This is Chapter 20, in which a dangerous adventure is related. As soon as night came and the whole castle was asleep, George and Freeheart slipped into the low hall to get arms. There, under the smoky joist, gleamed lances, swords, dirks, espadons, hunting knives, daggers, all that is required to kill man and wolf. Under each rafter a complete suit of armor stood upright, holding itself so sternly and proudly that it seemed as if it was still filled by the soul of the brave man who had arrayed himself in it in bygone days to go on great adventures. And the glove clasped the lance in 10 iron fingers, while the shield rested on the tassets of the thigh, as if to teach that prudence is necessary to courage, and that the good soldier is armed for defense as well as for attack. George selected amid so ample a choice the suit of armor which the father of Bee had carried as far as the Isles of Avalon and of Thule. He put it on with the help of Freeheart, and he did not forget the shield on which was blazoned proper the golden sun of the Clarities. Freeheart, on the other hand, arrayed himself in the good old steel coat of his grandfather, and crowned himself with an obsolete headpiece, to which he added a kind of moth-eaten and ragged plume, feather, or brush. He made this choice for fun and to look comical, for he considered that gaiety, good at all hours, is especially useful when there are great dangers to be incurred. Having thus armed themselves, they went off under the moon over the dark fields. Freeheart had tied the horses at the edge of a little wood near the fortress gate, where they found them gnawing the bark of the bushes. These horses were very swift, and it took them less than an hour to reach amid dancing will-o'-wisps and confused visions the mountains of the dwarfs. "Here's the cave," said Freeheart. The lord and squire dismounted. Sword in hand, they entered the cave. Great courage was required to engage in such an adventure, but George was in love and Freeheart was faithful. And, as the most delightful of poets says, what cannot friendship do, guided by sweet love? The lord and the squire walked in the darkness for nearly an hour. Then they saw a great blaze, at which they were astonished. It was one of those meteors with which we know the dwarves illuminate their kingdom. By the light of this subterranean brightness they saw that they were at the base of an ancient castle. "Here," said George, "is the castle which we must seize." "Certainly," answered Freeheart, "but allow me to drink a few drops of this wine which I brought with me as a weapon, for a good wine makes a good man, and a good man makes a good spear, and a good spear makes a bad foe." George, not seeing a living soul, roughly struck with the hilt of his sword the door of the castle. A small, quavering voice made him lift his head, and he saw at one of the windows a very small old man with a long beard, who asked him, "Who are you?" "George of the White Moor." "What do you want?" "I want to take back Bee of the Clarities, whom you unjustly detain in your molehill, ugly moles that you are." The dwarf disappeared, and again George found himself alone with Freeheart, who said to him, "My lord, I do not know if I am guilty of exaggeration when I state that in your answer to the dwarf you did not perhaps exhaust all the resources of the most persuasive eloquence." Freeheart feared nothing, but he was old. His manners, like the top of his head, had been smoothed by time, and he did not like to see people annoyed. George, on the other hand, rushed about, yelling, "Vile earthmen, moles, badgers, dormice, ferrets, and water-rats, only open the door and I will cut off all your ears." But hardly had he finished speaking these words when the bronze door of the castle opened of itself. No one could be seen pushing the huge leaves. George was frightened, and yet he stepped through the mysterious door because his courage was greater than his fear. Once inside the court, He saw at all the windows, and all the galleries, on all the roofs, on all the gables, inside the lamp, and even on the chimney-pots, dwarfs, armed with bows and crossbows. He heard the bronze door shut behind him, and a shower of arrows began to fall hard on his head and his shoulders. For the second time he was very frightened, and for the second time he overcame his fear. Shield on arm and sword in hand he went up the stairs, when suddenly he saw standing on the highest step and calmly majestic a stately dwarf, bearing the golden scepter, the royal crown, and the purple mantle. And this dwarf he recognized to be the little man who had freed him from his glass prison. Then he threw himself at his feet and said to him in tears, "My benefactor, is it you? Are you one of those who have taken from me Bee, whom I love?" "I am King Loc," answered the dwarf. "I have kept Bee with me to teach her the secrets of the dwarfs. Child, you have come upon my kingdom like hail on a garden of flowers, but the dwarfs, less weak than men, do not grow irritated as they do. I am too much above you in mind to feel anger at your acts, whatever they may be. Of all the advantages I have over you, there is one that I will carefully keep, and that is of being just. I will send for Bee, and I will ask her if she wishes to follow you. I will do this not because you demand it, but because it is my duty." There was a deep silence, and Bee appeared in a white dress with her fair hair loose. As soon as she saw George, she ran to throw herself in his arms, and clasped with all her might the iron breast of the knight. Then King Loc said to her, "Bee, is it true that this is the man whom you wish to marry?" "It is very true that this is the man, little King Loc," answered Bee. "Look, little man, how I laugh and how I am happy." And she began to cry. Her tears fell on George's cheek, and they were tears of happiness. Laughter mingled with the tears, and 1,000 delightful words which had no sense like those murmured by little children. She did not reflect that the sight of her happiness could sadden the heart of King Loc. "Dearest," George said to her, "I find you again just as I wished you to be, the most beautiful and the best of beings. You love me. Heaven be thanked, you love me. But Bee, do you not also love King Loc a little, who drew me from the glass prison where the slips kept me far from you?" Bee turned to King Loc. "Little King Loc, you did this!" she cried. "You loved me, and you freed the one who loved me and whom I loved." She could say no more, and she fell on her knees, her head in her hands. All the little men, witnesses of this scene, shed tears on their crossbows. King Loc alone kept an unmoved face. Bee, discovering in him so much magnanimity and so much kindness, felt for him the love of a daughter for a father. She seized the hand of her lover and said, "George, I love you. Heaven only knows how much I love you. But how can I leave little King Loc?" "Ha, ha, ha! You are both prisoners of mine," cried King Loc in a terrible voice. He put on a terrible voice by way of amusement and to play a good joke. But really he was not angry. Freeheart came to him and bent a knee to the ground. "Sir," he said, "will your highness be pleased to let me share the captivity of the master I serve?" Bee, recognizing him, said to him, "It is you, my good Freeheart. I am pleased to see you again. You are wearing a very ugly feather. Tell me, have you composed any new songs?" And so King Loc took them all three off to dinner. And that is Chapter 20, the penultimate chapter in Bee, Princess of the Dwarves. And we do see a dangerous adventure related, the adventure of George and Freeheart on their way to find and free Bee. And I really do enjoy this tale. The twist at the end, the fact that, well, it seems like King Loc is really a wise and good king. Of course he has, captured the three of them. But we'll see exactly what happens on Friday with Chapter 21. We get a sense from the title of the chapter, don't we? In which all ends well. This is Dan Scholz for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As always, thank you so much for listening.